Reddit by Reddit recap. Who is the worst attention seeker you've come across? There's a girl in my college classes who claims her dad owns a huge soccer team but doesn't know the name. She's dating one of the LA Lakers but can't give his name out. But she is also talking to someone who's in the NFL to keep her options open. She says her dad works at a local steel factory and has no idea where his extra money comes from because he gives her hush money, then called another girl out in class for lying to fit in. How does she keep her stories straight? Got confused just reading this. I went to high school with a girl like that. She was Indian and her parents owned a cheap motel in my hometown. They would take trips back to India to see their family. And she used to tell all of us she had this huge mansion in India and she was friends with some Middle Eastern prince and they had all these fancy cars and she was dating some super rich Indian guy. But could never provide any pictures of these belongings or these people she knew. Her family lived inside the hotel they owned and drove moderate vehicles. There's no way in hell they were wealthy. Middle class probably. But not wealthy. There was a girl in my college that constantly would say during orientation she told people she was recovering from brain cancer, didn't happen, and was partially deaf. She wasn't. She then found out my friend had epilepsy, so she started doing these exaggerated tremors. She then would fake seizures all the time for all the years she was there. Which was a pain in the butt because I would have to treat them like real ones. She did it once during a power outage for the most attention possible. She did it so often that once 911 hung up on someone calling it in because they knew it was her. I knew a girl in college whose father died at least 6 times over the span of one semester. Like, we would be hanging out. And then she gets a call. And then she drops the phone. Her eyes go red. And the waterworks start. Guys, my father just died. Didn't he die last month? Well, he got better. Maybe she had a lot of older sugar daddies with terminal illnesses? Oh, I've got a good one. I went to uni with her. In no particular order. She was abused repeatedly by an ex-boyfriend who kept on breaking into her room at night. When we reported it to campus security, they never saw anyone enter her room on security cameras. Same ex carved slut into her chest with a knife. Never saw any scarring or evidence of any sort. Same ex spray painted slut onto the outside of her window. She lived on the 4th floor of a tower block. Whilst traveling back home for Christmas she fell over, knocked herself out. Came to in the hospital. Was discharged and beat the train home she missed because of being knocked out. That particular train journey takes 3 hours. Whilst at home for Christmas her dad kept on taking LSD and asking her to drive him to places in his van. Even though she's never had a driving lesson. Was ran over repeatedly by a mutual friend. She just walked into his car. Claimed to be the biggest drug dealer on campus but no one ever once saw her stash. Can speak 7 languages fluently. But she can never remember which languages they are. There are so many of these. It was really sad and pathetic. Anyone who checks in at the hospital on Facebook. Or posts a picture in the hospital room then tells someone to message them for what happens or says they don't wanna talk about it. My fiance has been my best friend since we were kids. Once. In high school. He was dating a girl who decided that after scaring the shit out of him by trying to cuff him to the bed against his will, she was going to threaten to kill herself if he dumped her. About 10 years later I ran into her at a party. She was there with her husband and infant son, not the kind of party you take a baby to. But okay. She proceeded to tell me how they never technically broke up since being 15 years old. His answer to "if you dump me I'll kill myself" was to just stop talking to her. And because of that, they were technically still together and she was cheating on him with her husband. Making her son a bastard. She was 100% serious. And she also told me to tell him she wanted an apology. This was in front of a lot of very stunned people. Man, I feel bad for her husband. There was a girl who used to be part of this group of friends that I saw on the odd occasion when I was a teen. I only met her twice. But on both occasions she started to full on sing super loud whenever everybody else was talking and she was not involved in the conversation. I knew a woman who was similar. She was actually a pretty good singer. problem was, it went to her head and she sang in everybody's face after announcing what a good singer she was. Annoying. I kind of have a friend who randomly bursts into song in public. People in her life encouraged it for years and she just won't effing stop. She's terrible. She's also a total weeb and sings mostly anime intros, pronouncing every word wrong. My aunt always has been and probably always will be the biggest attention seeker I've ever met. At least I hope I never meet anyone worse. I'm going to sound awful at first, but hear me out. It started when she got cancer. She'd post on Facebook about how long she was at doctors and how she felt and that the family needed to gather around more. She told everyone she was going to be dead in under 6 months. At the time I understood. Sure. Get that attention. Get some love from friends, family, and internet strangers in your support group. That's an awful situation. She went into remission though. People didn't give her the same amount of encouragement and support she had been getting when she had led everyone to believe she was 100% going to die in 6 months. The people in the terminal cancer support group slowly stopped commenting completely. So I guess she missed the attention and started making posts bashing on the entire family that we're ungrateful and unappreciative of the battle she went through for us. My siblings and I live too far for normal visits, so we took a lot of fire during this time for not visiting enough when she thought she was dying. We did visit, but not as often as she felt we should have. Fast forward about a year. And here's where it starts getting bad. She starts posting pictures of my grandmother who is no longer in her right state of mind. Awful pictures. Hair messed up. Food all over her face and clothes. Dark rings under her eyes. With comments like "it's so hard to take care of your parents. Makes me so sad. Pray for us." My grandmother's memory is so far gone that every time I visited she thought I was my mother who passed away years before. I wouldn't correct her. But my aunt loved to. "Nanny, she's dead, she died years ago," at which point my grandmother would sob uncontrollably until she forgot why she was crying. Rinse and repeat for 5 times a visit. Each time my aunt would snap a photo and post about how hard it was to be the one to remind someone with dementia that her daughter-in-law is dead. Then I was in a car accident. It was a bad accident. I broke my neck and had a miscarriage. When I woke up in the hospital I was alone, but she had already heard of the accident from my father, who was my emergency contact. She added the other car's family members on Facebook, posted pictures of the car accident from the news and lied about my injuries. Such a bad accident, I can't believe she hit you guys. Thank God you only got a broken arm and she only broke a hip. Praying for you. Posted the same photos but hidden from the other people's family, tagged as another awful family catastrophe. Thank God OP didn't get herself or someone else killed. The accident wasn't my fault. I didn't break a hip. And one of the other car's passengers had a brain bleed and was in the hospital and rehab for over a year. And the most recent and the worst of all, I've never been big on Facebook and she quit tagging me when I asked her to stop contacting the other car's family as per my lawyer's request. Well, my grandfather's health had taken a turn for the worst. He was in hospice care. She of course was milking it for attention for herself. Since she wasn't tagging me, I was completely unaware. For this instance, however, she also neglected to tell my siblings and my father of this sudden and rapid health decline, going as far as to hide the posts from my sister, who always read and commented on her posts. None of us were aware. The rest of the family was gathered and was able to say their goodbyes on the day he died. She then posted a picture of my dead grandfather on Facebook, telling everyone that they were lucky to have been there for him in his final moments. This time tagging me, my siblings and my father. A follow-up post of my grandmother crying, saying, "How am I supposed to tell her again when she forgets? Pray for us." Well, I was at work when he passed, so I didn't even see the posts yet. I got called into my manager's office because an aunt on my mother's side called yell at me because my awful aunt messaged her and told her none of us showed up to visit my grandfather on his deathbed. My manager let me leave early and I got to my phone in my locker and see the post and messages from my siblings that my father was distraught and drank himself into oblivion and was now at the hospital getting his stomach pumped. Wanna guess what my awful aunt's next post was? A post about my father drinking himself dumb because he felt guilty for being an awful son and not caring enough to visit his dying father. And how it made her so sick that she was alone in all this with no support from her baby brother. She kindly tagged us all in that post too. Too much information? Yeah, probably. And I'm sorry for the wall. Do I feel better after sharing? I 100% do. I'd share my feelings about her on Facebook, but she'd just effing love it. My roommate's cat died last week. When she told her co-workers, one lady proceeded to start telling a story about a cat she kinda owned that never even lived with her that died 5+ years ago. She got so worked up that she started crying and the entire office started consoling the co-worker instead of my roommate whose cat had died the day before. Unbelievable. Back in early elementary school during art, I used to talk about my own art to get a lot of compliments from other students. My teacher noticed it and told me to stop. I once did that and my friend was like, oh yeah, you're right. It sucks, and I felt so betrayed. Law. At our wedding she did everything she could to steal attention away from her sister, my wife. She wore a dress that she had altered to be both low cut and short skirted. Then when no one was paying her attention, kept accidentally dropping things so she would bend over to pick them up. When her dad remarried, she was telling people at the ceremony that she had cancer, but had come to terms with it. She didn't have cancer. I went to a costume wedding once. One woman, not the bride, wore her own wedding dress and claimed she was the bride of Chucky. A lady that I work with is the biggest one-upper I have ever met. In April I had major surgery to remove half of my digestive system and was given a lot of attention from our concerned co-workers. She was not happy because she wasn't the center of attention anymore. Well, she found out she needed to have a DNC, outpatient procedure to cauterize her uterus, and you're awake for the whole thing. She came into work, she decided to milk it for all she could. And when she came into work the next day, she was distraught over the fact no one came to check up on her the night before and wouldn't talk about anything but her recovery. By the end of the week she was telling people she was recovering from cancer surgery. In fact, she still complains that she is recovering from it, and this happened back in April. She also told me, unsolicited of course, that the reason she didn't come see me while I was in the hospital was because her mom had died in a hospital 13 years ago and she is still grieving, and going to a hospital would make her grieving process start all over again. I actually feel bad for her. Oh. I know a bigger one-upper than that. There was this British TV show about bad moms, and one of them made her daughter dress way older than she looked. Daughter wanted to wear a t-shirt and jeans to go out to eat. Mom made her wear tights, miniskirt, boots, tight tee, sleeveless overcoat, and a boatload of jewelry. Kid basically looked like she was in a Disney show, and would make her daughter randomly sing and do her cheer routine in public because you never know who's watching. People get discovered on the streets every day. My mom did this and it effed me up so bad. I wasn't allowed to pick out clothes until I was 14. She decided on my outfits and hair. I get it. She wanted me to look nice. But treating me like a doll wasn't the answer. I know it sounds dumb and weak, but it left trauma. If I didn't sit perfectly still for 1-4 hours while she did my hair, I got screamed at, my hair yanked on, and denied food. My high school ex posted a picture of a knife to his wrist on Twitter after I broke up with him for cheating on me and being a pathological liar. He told everyone to message me and to talk to him. I cut off all contact, or he was going to kill himself. I hate that I was young and dumb. So it worked and we ended up back together. I once had a guy do that, but we'd been on like 3 dates. Called the cops on his pathetic A. He got all upset with me because his parents got angry with him, lol. But I totally understand the young and dumb part. Especially if you once cared about this dude and you don't want to see him in pain. My grandma has to make everything about her. Literally everything. No matter the person or situation. And if the convo switches to where it's not about her, she gets visibly annoyed and you can see the gears turning in her head as she tries to figure out how to get the conversation back onto her. She constantly retells stories she's already told 1000 times back from when she was younger if she can't think of anything recent. If I have to ever again hear about how she was prom queen back in 1951, or valedictorian of her 10-person 8th grade class, or how whenever she goes anywhere, everyone just loves her, she literally says, and you know, they just love me all the time, I'm gonna lose it. I've got the feeling she will try to steal the attention from someone having a fatal heart attack. Best comment of the day. I'm writing this comment on a throwaway account, because if I had wrote this on my main account I know the people would find me. But, I need to get this off my chest very badly. I'm very well known for dating online than in real life. I currently have an online boyfriend and we've been dating for 7 months. Yes, we have actually met. We did this year, 2019, actually, and it was in October. Anyways, when I was 16 I dated this guy online. None of my past online boyfriends had ever asked for a nude, or for me to take a picture of myself in such a manner before. He didn't really ask for it, he suggested it, but I could tell he really wanted it. I really contemplated for a while if I should even do this, if this would get me into some trouble or anything. I would ask him before sending, and he would always give me the "do you not trust me?" type of questions. I did. I sincerely did. I sent the photos, and it was all fine for a while. We were fine for a week, then his friend, that was my ex, had came out he had feelings for my best friend. I didn't like it. I'll admit I was jealous at first. They could kind of figure that part out. I told them no. My boyfriend at the time was really pissed at me cause his friend, being my ex, gave him permission to date me, but for me not to give his friend permission to date my friend was absolutely stupid. I told him I had my reasonings, and I did. He broke up with me a day later. His friend was African American, and while it wasn't a problem for my best friend, it was for her family. I knew this. They didn't. Albeit I didn't tell either of them. Her and I did have a conversation about it. I didn't like anything to do with the fact she was actually contemplating on dating my ex. I don't know what you other females think about girl code, but in my personal opinion it all depends on how the ex was handled during the relationship. His and I's relationship was fine until the breakup. That's when it got messy. I'll spare the details cause that's not the point. I told my friend that if her and him dated I'd cut her off immediately without a second thought. The problem was she didn't actually date him. The problem was she lied to my face and went behind my back telling him things she told me she wouldn't say. That's when I cut her off. We were both pretty upset and torn. She talked mad shit about me while I never spoke one word about her ever. If people brought her up I just told them we went our separate ways. I was a sophomore in high school, and one day I had to do concession stands for a basketball game. I got a text from somebody telling me my nudes were on Facebook, with a bunch of people making fun of me for how small my boobs were. I didn't show my face in them, so I thought to myself I didn't know how these guys could know it was me. Then with further analysis, my ex, the one who wanted to get with my best friend at the time, had posted them. He got them from the other guy who was his friend, the guy I had sent them to in the beginning. I knew it was illegal, but what I didn't know is if you could actually call the cops on somebody from a different state. Meaning if I was from Georgia and he was in Montana. Obviously not the right locations for either of us, but that's what I didn't know. I didn't want to risk it. I also knew if I called the cops I'd get in trouble too, and that's what I was more afraid of. Eventually the post got taken down, and my so-called best friend even said I deserved it. I have proof of her saying it too. 3 years later, I'm 19, and she's 20. I'm best friends with her again. We both agreed we handled the situation terribly. We make fun of each other of it now. However, I will never forget that something she said about me. I can tell she genuinely feels bad too, because when I showed her the screenshot of her saying that, because she had genuinely forgotten, she had started crying and said that was one of the worst things she's ever said in her life, and she was sorry. I don't know where the guys are at, but I'm positive one of them still has my photos. I'm 19 now, so I don't think I can do anything about it unless one of them posts them again. If you actually read all of this, thank you.